Barth, your first reaction and first takeaway when it comes to this Judon trade?
My first reaction was finally a resolution. He was never going to play here on the $6.5 million. I don't think he's going to play in Atlanta on the $6.5 million. I know it was reported that he went without a contract, and then almost instantly there's a follow-up report that Atlanta's already restructuring deals because they're a little tight on the cap. But finally a resolution, and then for what it was, I thought they got a good return. It shouldn't have gotten this far, and we talked about this last week, Tim.
Yep.
But for where things were, for the situation they were in, and I think both sides hold some blame for the reason things got as far as they did. For the situation they were in, top 100 pick, and we can dig into this a little more about why I think that's the right price, but that's exactly the right price.
What about the impact for the defense for the Patriots this season?
It's a big blow. It's a big blow. This guy was your top playmaker, probably the best player on the team. Top playmaker defensively, really your only source of early down, true pass rush threat. Christian Gonzalez kind of having a shaky camp. Barmore probably out for the season, at least out for the foreseeable future. Mm-hmm. You're talking about really the one blue chip player on the defense, the one blue chip player, on the defense. I came away from Tuesday's joint practice saying the defense looked like a representative unit. They looked like a top 10, potentially top 5 unit. The way they held up against the Eagles, a big part of the reason I said that was the performance Matthew Judon had. So this changes the dynamics of that completely.
What's the message being sent to that locker room at this point? Everybody else got paid except for him. He is their best player on that side of the ball, and he gets sent off to Atlanta. Now, we don't know if he's going to play on the contract or not. Right. Conflicting reports on that. It certainly sounds like this morning. But what do you think is the message that's being sent to that group?
Yeah, it's tough to say because, remember, we were talking about at the beginning of camp when Godshaw wanted a new deal, and it was even floated that Joshua Uche was kind of looking to redo his free agent deal, that where do you draw the line? And I said you draw it after Matthew Judon. I had said that at the time. But it draws a line there, and I also think it sends the message that we're in this for the long term. This is about more than 2024. We are in this to reset this thing and rebuild it. And realistically, Matthew Judon was never going to be a part of that. I'm somebody who said, and we can get into this, they should have paid him back in March or April. Yeah. But by pay him, I mean put a 1-year Band-Aid on it, get through this season, then go your separate ways. Because I think having him here just to establish a culture, and you don't want losing to become habitual, there's value in that. It got to the point where that was no longer realistic, and I think they had to move him. But it sends the message now that this is a long-term thing. They're in this for the long haul, and there's going to be an overhaul of the roster. It's already started, but there's going to be an overhaul of the roster over the next year or two.
Two things. I know that other shows have guests and stuff like that. Am I the only one that feels like this is uncomfortably close between the three of us?
I would agree
right
with that. But you are the one who said Barth needs to sit
Well,
here.
I know for TV purposes and everything like that, but I can't believe they do this on the consistent basis. It's just awkwardly close, I feel like.
Not that big of a guy that I'm taking up that much space.
It's a tight squeeze. Yeah, it's tight.
Can you imagine the big boy before he wasn't so big?
How's that?
Sitting in the middle of Felger and Mazia.
Do
Move back a little bit, Barth. Tell you what, McCone, I'm just going to move all the way down here.
There we go.
This is
you can just say I smell. That's fine.
No, you smell delightful. I mean, that's Irish Spring right there, man.
Getting it back on the tracks though, after everything that went down with Judon, and I understand that he's their most talented player, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I do feel like at a certain point though, in terms of this season, even. With everything that was going on with Matthew Judon, whether it was, the training camp practice where he's sitting on the trash can, whether it's the Instagram posts saying even a 10-year-old knows that they should pay me, even if it's the press conference where he comes out and throws kind of gasoline on the situation again, for a team that's trying to establish a culture and for a team that also is allowing players to now speak more openly, I feel like the situation as a whole was not one that you could go into the season with because this team isn't going to be good. And if you start losing games, I don't think he was suddenly going to just become a good soldier and fall into line. And I think that damage in terms of what you're trying to build from a culture perspective outweighs even the production that you would get on the field, even with him being your most talented player.
And that first Monday of pads, which was the day that he walked out, came back, walked out again, that was the point of no return for me. I was pay him because I thought that there was value in keeping him. I was pay him up until that point. I think once that happened, it was clear that it was time to part ways. Why did it take so long? I think they wanted to generate a market, and sneaky story, I don't doubt anybody really around here noticed, but I don't know if it was Monday, maybe Tuesday. So the Falcons, everybody knows they took Michael Penix at the top of the draft. Their fans are upset they didn't get an edge rusher. They used a day 2 pick on a guy named Braylon Trice out of Washington, who I really like. Some people thought he was going to be a first-round pick. He got hurt. He had a season-ending injury a couple days ago. And I don't think that's a coincidence that now the Falcons come in and the deal finally gets done. And that goes back to something we talked about last week, Tim. The failure here to me is that they didn't get this resolved sooner, whether it was ultimately a trade back in March or it was getting a new deal done back then because you didn't have the pressure of Judon being the last guy to not get paid. Players are inherently worth more during that period when everybody's team building than they are now. If you want any evidence, Brandon Ayuk's not worth a second-round pick. He's worth a lot more than that. He's a top 15 wide receiver in the league, but there's just a tax that comes with making a trade this time of year when teams' rosters are settled. They have less cap space. The assets are less set. You don't know. We talked about this with the Patriots. You can't trade the first-round pick because you don't know. It could be the first overall pick. It could be 10th. So if they trade Judon back in March, maybe they get a little bit more. Even if they get a third, they get it in last draft. Boy, would an extra third-round pick help out right now, especially given the reports after the draft that they were maybe trying to move up back into the first round for a tackle or a wide receiver. That is the miss here, is that this didn't get resolved months ago. Even though the outcome may have been the same, they would have had more opportunities with that same outcome back in March.
Tim, I don't know if you want to do this here or the other side, but I think the timing of this is important. And when the Patriots decided to move on from Matt Judon, and I want to pick your brain on that, like, did they think this thing was going to get resolved? Did they kind of drag their feet on it until you reach that point of no return on Monday? Well, the first full day of pads. When did they decide to trade Matt Judon? When did they come to this conclusion? And why did it take so long? I think that's a huge part of this discussion.
Hey, if you like that clip, check out more videos from Zolak and Bertrand right here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.